Hey, friends, doing a little bit something different today. I look like a man at a news desk, and that's because today I've got Travis Fritts here from Old Nation Brewing Company in Williamston, Michigan. I'm going to bring him in right now. Hey, Travis, how you doing?
Hey, good, Sean. Thanks. How you doing, man?
Long time no speak.
No kidding. No kidding. Of course, I can say that about a lot of folks these days,
That's true. Yeah, 100%. I heard this crazy rumor that you guys were releasing a new beer, and it was going to be hitting stores here soon.
Yeah, today. It should be going into some stores today. So the way we release these beers is generally we don't kind of give them to all the stores and ask them to release them on a given day. It seems to work, as you say, inelegantly if we do it that way. So essentially, if your store's pickup day is today, that is that they get a drop off from Imperial Beverage today, they'll get it today. If not, then it'll be whatever subsequent day this week. Hopefully they get their orders.
So, yeah, I was just going to say it's hitting shelves this week. What's the difference between this particular version of Boss Tweed? This is Guava Boss Tweed, in case we didn't say it. What's the difference between Guava Boss Tweed, and, like, say, a Tart Strawberry M43? What's the difference between the two?
I think you hit on one of them, is that it's more of a mouthful to say. I've stumbled over this name 50 times in the last 2 weeks. So Strawberry M43, we've been pretty open. It's on our website. I wrote a big thing about it. The first thing with beers like this where we're adding fruit is that we're concerned about re-fermentation in the package. That is to say, all of the sugar in the fruit is fermented out, particularly with beers like New England IPAs or really any highly aromatic hop beer like a West Coast IPA. Is that if you, for example, pasteurize them, you'd lose a lot of that hop characteristics. So you can't pasteurize them. And particularly in the case of New England IPA, they're unfiltered, so there will be some yeast, at least in the package. So all the sugar has to be fermented out. So having said that, it's really difficult for whatever reason to get strawberry flavor out of strawberries in that context. And what you're left with, we found, is kind of like it ends up being sort of the flavor of potassium, if that makes sense. It's just kind of a salty flavor. So if you were, for example, to ferment out kiwis and strawberries, it would taste the same, right?
Okay.
So in the case of strawberry, which is a relatively indicative flavor, but light in that case, we used extract. And we've, again, talked about it every year. We've released the beer, and it's really the way to go for that fruit, in our opinion. With regard to Boss Tweed, what we're doing is we actually used whole fruit puree with the Guava Boss Tweed. So it's a lot. It's a big 55-gallon drum of pink guava puree per 80-barrel batch. And we did several of those, I think 5 of those all told. So that's the main difference. The whole fruit adds not just flavor and aroma, of course, less efficiently than extract might, but it really does add a really good flavor and aroma. But it also adds a really interesting mouthfeel and just general depth to the beer, and that's one of the things I like about it.
And I'd also think something with strawberry that, strawberry is more watery. It's kind of a more watery kind of fruit, so I would think that would kind of introduce some of that into it too, right?
It would, yeah. And we noticed that when we've done trials with strawberry, it tends to play with the pH in ways that are less predictable than other fruits. As it sweetens, as a strawberry sweetens in its ripening stage, it tends to lose some acidity. Whereas a fruit like guava, as you say, is more sort of dense and fibrous. So that actually, we think, played into the look of Guava Boss Tweed, which is the other main difference.
And I was going to bring that up. I noticed that you guys got out in front of it on Instagram and said, hey, Boss Tweed, you're used to this really super hazy thing. Guava Boss Tweed might not be quite so hazy.
Yeah, that's right. It's not. And so we did a test batch and we saw that it came through clear. But, honestly, we weren't thinking much about the look. We were thinking about how the fruit kind of performed.
Right.
And probably we should have given more thought to the look. But, as we brewed, 250 barrels of this stuff or whatever it was, we saw that the way the beer dropped out, so the way that the beer clarified naturally was just at an intensely higher rate than it would Normally, we depend, in these beers generally on lipids, so oils from the hops and fat from the oats, protein from the wheat to make the bulk of this really kind of semi-permanent haze. Yeast in haze or in solution, in this kind of solution, will drop out eventually.
Mhm.
But the kind of haze that we experience in these beers generally doesn't. And we think that's why it is, because it's so dependent on oils and bound oils, which tend to float, but not all the way to the top, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
right. So brewers have used fining agents forever. Isinglass, fish bladders is one of them. We generally tend not to, but the reason why they use those fining agents, brewers, historically, has been to clarify the beer, that there's kind of an ionic bonding that tends to happen between the fining agent and proteins, polyphenols particularly. And those bind, as I say, and precipitate out of the substrate much more quickly than they would naturally do. And we see that there looks to be some kind of ionic bonding that's happened with guava. I don't think it's just the mass of fiber and puree that took it down. I don't think that hung out in solution for long enough to do that. So we think that's just kind of the character of this fruit. And instead of artificially cloud it up, we just decided it tastes good. It feels good. I mean, everything about the beer is good. It's just more clear than it normally is. So we decided to let it rip.
Do you guys think that you'll see like a lot of kickback about that from people drinking it, on people leaving their Untapped reviews and stuff like that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of thought that's what you'd say, but
yeah,
I should throw it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, it's it is what it is. I think I look, we poured God knows how much money worth of guava in this beer. We're not upcharging for it. This is something we do for folks because we know they like it. And I guess we'll let the jury decide.
So how limited is this going to be? I know that a couple of years ago, I think when you first did the tart strawberry M43, it was really hard to get. I think this year it was a little bit easier to get. What do you think the likelihood of picking this up will be this time around?
Sure. Well, we did about 4,500 cases of strawberry M43 this year, and for the Guava Boss Tweed, we cut it to the extent that Boss Tweed sells less than M43. So it's kind of sort of a mathematical thing for us. We said, okay, well, it sells about 60%, so we'll make about 60% as much Guava Boss Tweed as we did M43. So it's around a little bit more than 2,000 cases in the Michigan market, and then another couple hundred went out to our other 19 states that we sell in.
Oh, wow. So we'll be getting the bulk of it here. Yeah,
that's the same thing with strawberry M43 too.
Right. Is this something that right now, let's say somebody watches this video and they say, it might be really difficult for me to get it at a store. Can they come to Williamston and pick this up, like buy it from you guys now, or is it something that's totally been sent out?
So like we did with the strawberry M43, we sent all that beer out. We're, trying to be responsible citizens and not have places for folks to congregate unnecessarily, or have to travel to, which loses us some money, but it's okay. We'd rather do it this way than the other.
Yeah. So are there any other special releases that you can give us here a little maybe a tip of the hat to, like any new special stuff coming out that you can talk about?
Special for me, but maybe not for beer
Tell us about it.
Okay. So we've been on this lager series now for about a year as it stands.
Yep.
And we think we've really dialed in I think we've dialed all of them in, but really have dialed in the Helles and have gotten really good response here in Michigan, certainly. But in out markets where craft lager at least tends to be stronger, we've gotten great response. So Chicago, Colorado, New York, New Jersey, parts of Pennsylvania, people have really been responding to it well. So we'll be putting that in the spring in a 12-ounce 12-pack format, which we think it works in. It, unlike the New England IPAs, isn't so intensely expensive to make and inefficient to make. So we can charge a comparable price to what other craft brewers are charging for their lagers. And we hope that it works. We'll see if people kind of glom onto it or not. But essentially what it is a really good representation of a really good style of beer that we really like a lot. And we're using the opportunity that we've made for ourselves by having these New England IPAs to see if we can shout loud enough about it and get people turned back on to these beers.
Yeah, and that's the thing that every one of the lagers that you guys have done so far have, I'm not necessarily somebody that leans towards lager. That's not necessarily where I would go to first, but I've tried, I think, every one of the lagers that you guys have released, in this past series, starting with the pilot series one. And yeah, they've all been really great. They all have, it's funny because you think of lager sometimes and you might think, oh, they all taste the same. But it's kind of like the same thing with, all the IPAs, not only New England style IPA, they all taste the same. They might say the same thing on it, but they all have their own little differences. Lager is not always just a lager.
Yeah, I mean, I think we, for a long time, my brewing partner, Nate, and I particularly, but a lot of the folks around here at Old Nation who are turned on to lagers have talked about how to explain the difference to folks in a way that resonates. And I think the closest we've got is to say that, is to make the comparison to music, right? So your IPAs, your barrel-aged stouts, your, fruit smoothie beers, they're a little bit more like punk, right? You can teach somebody how to do it pretty easily. It's loud, it's everything all the time. And the purpose of it is to kind of punch you in the nose with what it is, right? Where lager tends to be more like jazz, or I think even classical music, in that it's real subtleties that make the difference between a good one and a bad one, or, this good one and that good one. And I think that it takes more practice and more discipline of the palate to really separate all that stuff in a lager. And I think that's important and part of beer for a couple hundred years. I hope folks remember.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to explain it too. We don't think about it all the time in that kind of, analog, but that actually really puts it into a good perspective as to what the differences are.
Yeah.
So I guess with that being said, you're not going to be releasing any really heavily fruited seltzers to us anytime soon.
We decided not to do seltzers. We're not, if we die on that hill, then let it be. I think is kind of where we're at. We're capable, but I don't know, man. I don't like.
You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen those really, like, you pour this? It's a seltzer, but you pour it and it's so thick, and it's like let's say it's raspberry, for example, then it's just like just chunks of fruit are just it's like purple and it's just falling out of it. It doesn't even look like a seltzer at that point.
I mean, I feel like you're doing a hell of a job pitching it, but I haven't. No, I haven't seen it. I don't know what it is. Yeah, no, it sounds pretty gross.
Yeah, I've seen a few places locally that have done it, and more places are kind of picking up on it. So I'm kind of curious to see. I haven't tried any yet. I just haven't gotten a chance to, and I'm just wondering if that's like the next kind of seltzer wave that we'll start seeing, since all that stuff. I had one
hesitate to guess.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's all speculation, right?
That's right.
I had a really kind of, not a nitpicky question, but something that I've been, since we talked about setting up this interview, I've been kind of poring over some stuff. Not really I'm not like, not like a wizard trying to learn some new spells or anything, but I was looking at the little like media that's out there for the Guava Boss Tweed label. And the one thing other than saying guava and having the fruit, on the Boss Tweed, it usually says double IPA, and now it says double India Pale Ale.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that?
Yes. The TTB is capricious, is the reason generally, I think. So we passed the Boss Tweed label as is through the TTB, and it was fine. This time we passed the Guava Boss Tweed. There are particular fruits that you don't have to get approved by the TTB through their formulation department, right? Where you have to write out the recipe and the process and all this stuff. And there are fruits that you do. That's changed recently. You used to have to do it for any fruit. So we just figured, well, it's a guava. People know what guava is. It shouldn't be a problem. But as it turns out, guava is one of the ones that have to go through formulation. So there's way more scrutiny. And at some point, some functionary decided at the TTB that IPA wasn't cutting it or wasn't descriptive enough, and it had to be India Pale Ale. So they didn't go back on the Boss Tweed label.
Yeah, I thought it was just, I don't know. I just kind of looked at it and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. That's, it changed. The wording kind of changed. Not that it makes a bit of difference either way. It does to some people, but I just thought like, oh, that's kind of curious, like that it actually changed. And I just wondered if there was like a reason, if it was like, like you're saying, if there was like a regulatory reason behind it, or if it was just kind of like, we thought we'd switch it up, maybe explain what it is, what a DIP or a double IPA, or, if whatever that is better.
No, we know that people know what an IPA is, and I mean, I think it's one of those things where you would expect. Well, I think somebody without a ton of experience working with these kind of agencies would expect that they would be pretty much buttoned up, right? So if IPA is good for one beer, it's good for another beer, and but it really seems to depend on what individual you're working with there, and what they will allow or not allow, and it is frustrating. It's a super frustrating process, but fine.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that big.
In the grand scheme of things, it's
Right.
a drop in the bucket, but I could see it being, it's kind of like you call customer service, and depending on who you get, it might be the person that knows exactly what you need to do.
Exactly right. And you want to push back, and then at some point, in your career, you just stop pushing back and say, okay, India Pale Ale it is. We'll have the revision back to you anytime soon. Yeah.
Whatever you need. Whatever you need.
Yeah, whatever you need.
All right, so that's it. Just to wrap up, basically, the Guava Boss Tweed's going to be out in stores this week. Depending on who your local distributor is when you can expect to see it on your shelves. I know, some places are Thursday, some places are Wednesday. It's all whatever day throughout the week, and it's going to be limited supply, like tart strawberry was. So if it's something that you're interested in picking up, keep your eyes peeled. But also in the future, maybe if IPAs or New England style IPAs aren't your thing, you'll have a lagers, basically lagers.
Yeah. You'll see it. It'll be in a nice kind of black and green package, and it'll have the Old Nation logo on it. And in terms of where folks can find the guava, the Meijer stores will have them, and Kroger stores will have them too, but only the 13 flagship Meijer stores. So there's one in each region, more or less. And then the same thing with Kroger. Most of this is going to independents this year. Your holiday markets, your, Zatunas, all those kind of folks that have been great to us and sold a lot of our beer here in the past will be getting a fair amount, and you should be able to find it at those places.
All right. And I'll dust off my Instagram, and I'll dust off my Facebook account for the first time in a while to keep an eye on when those, when they're getting brought in. So
you don't put that on me, man. Stay off of me.
No. Not at all. That's the hunting ground for me, is you gotta,
Fair enough.
All right. Yeah. Thanks so much, Travis. I've really enjoyed talking to you, obviously, but also, like I just mentioned a little bit earlier, everything that, out of Old Nation that I've had, I've obviously talked about it a lot, and I'm really a big fan. So I really appreciate you taking the time to, to take a few minutes to talk to me and talk to the viewers and just kind of give us some info about Guava Boss Tweed. Well, of course, I love your channel. I watch it all the time, and I appreciate you contacting me for this, man. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot. Yep. All right. See ya. And so until next time, everybody, this is Travis Fritts from Old Nation Brewing, Sean from Draft Therapy. Remember, drink craft beer, support your local breweries, and most importantly, don't forget to treat yourself to a little Draft Therapy. Thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers. Cheers.